Okay, that's great. Well, riffing off of that, so I mean, all the changes that are going on in the industry, some of which to Carvana, but just in general in the industry, which do you think, looking up 6 to 9 months, which of these changes are going to persist, and what does the landscape look like in terms of differences in like 6 to 9 months?
Sure. Well, so first, like I guess I would say, I think the more complex the system is, the less likely you are to be right when you kind of try to predict it. And I think the auto industry is a pretty complex system, so the odds that any say here is right is just not that high. But I would say 6 to 9 months isn't that long. If we were looking out 2 years or 3 years, I think my guess would be the world looks a lot more like it did pre-pandemic than anything else. The next 6 to 9 months, I think a lot of things could happen. I do think that there have been so many odd distortions in the economy in general that I think in auto in particular for the last 2 years, whether it's car prices shooting the moon or interest rates moving up, demand kind of spiking, probably related a lot to stimulus, and then really kind of dropping down so people get more anxious. I think that there's so many odd distortions happening right now that to me, my guess is the next year or two is an unwinding of a lot of those distortions. And I think a lot of the things, my view would be a lot of things that many people believe are going to persist and even permanent changes that result from what we've all experienced in the last 2 years. I think it's less likely to persist than maybe many others think. I think that we'll kind of head slowly but surely back to a little bit before. Things that we've all learned over the last 20, 30 years of our career were generally true. But right now, we're definitely where it's by.
Okay, well, that's a good perspective. So my takeaway from that is it's going to look a lot more like 2018, 2019 in the future than it does today. What changes that we've learned over the last 2 years for industry-wide are going to persist? So how do you think fundamentally changed? And so what do you think is going to look actually different and not just regress back to the way things were run prior to COVID?
So we'll find out. But I think some of the things, one of the areas that I think people believe will persistently change, that I'm not sure I agree with persistently change, is kind of this idea of carrying less supply and kind of making more money per car. I think that the world's a competitive place, and everyone wants to do the best they can. And I think that probably the competitive pressures they kind of drove OEMs in the past to produce, to kind of cyclically produce too many cars and too few cars, and profits kind of move around into that. I think those are probably persistent forces. I don't really understand why those would necessarily change. I think that part of what's happened in the whole world over the last couple of years, just the supply chains have completely broken, but that's hyper concentrated in auto. I think auto has the most complex, the most global, and probably the most overlapping supply chains of anything. Many of these OEMs use the same suppliers, who use the same suppliers, who use the same suppliers. And so we saw so much sort of coordinated production of supply. And the fact that kind of prices and profits go up when supply is low is probably not super surprising. It's extraordinarily true when not only does supply go down, but also demand goes up because there's so much money kind of sloshing around the economy for so many kind of different reasons. And I think people look at that and say, like, man, I want that to stay the same, which I think is a pretty natural instinct. But in my mind, at least, I think that basically the supply chain disruptions and some of the other crazy distortions in the world created the conditions that allowed everyone to kind of act similarly, and that was a very profitable way to act. But I think people ultimately will kind of go try to chase their own ball and try to do what's best for them. And I think that then the world probably looks a lot more like it looked before, as these supply chains mend and everyone doesn't act in a kind of coordinated fashion just because they kind of know other choices. So that's one area where I think there's a lot of discussion now about all the things that have been learned. I think what was learned there was that when there's not a lot of supply, prices go up and people make money. I think that's that wasn't like a particularly unique lesson from history. And I think the question is, will there are mechanisms that will allow people to coordinate in the future to achieve those same goals? And my personal view would be that I doubt it, but who knows?
It's great. It's great. Thanks, Ernie. So let's take it to the wholesale side of things, because most of the folks in this room, this conference, are somewhat connected to wholesale. You guys raised a lot of eyebrows earlier this year when you bought, Augusta's U.S. physical assets. As you look forward 2 years in the wholesale space, it seems like there's a lot of change going on. Any thoughts on how you think the wholesale market, auction industry, upstream selling, etc., will evolve in the next 2 years?
So, I mean, this is right there, and it's going to be kind of in our interest. So, I guess like I want to caveat before I say it, and people should take it with a grain of salt that makes sense and like that. But my view would be, I think that one of the distortions that I think occurred when supply chains broke and money was sloshing around and car prices shot up is that every consumer all of a sudden had an asset that had a bunch of equity in it, and that changes things quite a bit. Right? That makes it a lot easier to acquire cars directly from customers. So some of the other kind of impacts we do with the wholesale market is all of a sudden there's not enough cars around for rental car companies to get cars, and so they become net buyers out of wholesale channels and sellers. And so I think all these things happen that cause auctions to get a lot less volume and for wholesale prices to go up quite a bit, and for those wholesale prices to also kind of separate from the prices that were available in other channels like direct-to-consumer channels, but also for those kind of direct-to-consumer offers to be so high relative to consumers' expectation that it got a lot easier to buy cars. If a customer paid $20,000 for a car and it's worth $25,000, but they show up and they say, "Hey, will you pay me?" and they're expecting 15 and you say 22, they're pretty excited about that. They're probably going to sell it to you. And so I think that led to a lot of kind of working around auctions. With a lot of dealers out there were able to more effectively buy cars from customers because of the fact that car prices shot up so much and things were so different relative to a customer's expectations. And those are the sorts of things that I do think that path is going to look like. And I'm not super confident right about this, but I think they'll unwind and normalize. We see car prices dropping really quickly right now. We see it looks like auction volumes are starting to stabilize and maybe even perform a little bit better than you would expect seasonally as more volume kind of goes in that direction. So my guess is things will start to look a little bit more normal and get a little harder to buy cars directly from customers because we're going to have kind of like the other side that way. Instead of customers being blown away at how valuable their car is, there'll be customers that buy cars the last 2 years and are going to be blown away by how low the bids are on their cars. So my guess is wholesale slowly but surely kind of starts to move back to where it was before. And there will always be secular change, but I think these typical things will probably unwind, and I don't know the time frame about that.
Great, thanks, Rudy. So I'm going to ask you to reflect back on your journey now over the last 10 years. What's been the biggest surprise that you've had over the last 10 years?
Oh man, the biggest surprise. I would say something that I was told relatively early in my kind of working career is everything was going to be hard. There's so many people in the world that if there's a problem we're solving and it's easy to solve and somebody else already solved it, so all the problems that are left are really, really hard. And I think that that's the truth. And I think something that I think has been true throughout this journey, and it's especially true now, is you kind of ride this roller coaster where there are times when it feels like you can do no wrong, and there are times when it feels like you can do no right. There are times when everyone looks at you and thinks you're a genius. There's times when everyone looks at you and thinks that you're stupid. And I just think the truth is usually between all those things. And I think that's kind of the most important lesson. I think the most important lesson is you have to find a couple of things that you really believe that you're not going to stray from, and you have to start building toward those things. And then you have to fight kind of the emotions of the ups and the downs and just kind of keep marching. And hopefully that all kind of works out in the end. And there's many versions of that, but it's people have seen we're a 10-year-old company, and I think that in the auto industry we may be a little bit differently than we were in say like capital markets or like the venture capital world or that. But we were never like a sexy company. We were a company in Arizona doing something that didn't really make sense, that was asset heavy when nobody liked assets. Trying to sell cars online when nobody believed they could do it, trying to buy cars online when nobody thought that you'd get crushed. And I think that for a long time, from probably when we started in 2013 when we launched, we started working on it in 2011. From then until I think honestly post-pandemic probably, we were never really like a darling. I think there was a lot more of those downs and there were ups. And then for the first time, I think COVID hit, and that just completely smacked us, right? Like we were not positioned at all for that. I the story narrative was great for us, and I think there's elements of truth to that. There's elements of that maybe aren't exactly right, but when it hit, it really, really hurt. Because, like every other business out there, I work with these were transaction-based businesses, and you know all your expenses when transactions go away. That's a really tough situation. And so we got punched in the face there, and what car prices are going to drop, they're never going to come back. And then the world came back really quick. Right? There was a lot of stimulus came out, and the world came back really fast economically. And we had this window basically from kind of mid 2020 to late 2021, where we were a darling for a second. We were kind of at the top of the roller coaster, and all of a sudden, people used all the positive words to describe us instead of all the negative words. That was fun. We acted again relatively soon. We're now kind of back to a place where we've spent most of our lives, and I think honestly, it's a comfortable place to be. But I just think it's what we're used to, and it's sort of like easier to stay focused and build, and it's easier to get motivated when people don't believe you than when people do. But I think that's just part of that ride. And I think that, one of the major lessons of this whole thing is just the ride moves around more than reality does, and you just got to try to stay steady.
That's great. Good insights. So related to that, rewind the clock. Anything you would have done different over the last 10 years?
So I think if I get to kind of answer that question in like the cheap ways and be exactly right all the time, then there's a million things I would do differently. But if I can answer that question in the more honest ways, I think, when I say honest, I mean more reasonable, like more of the choice that we could have made across time. I think, of course, we've made all kinds of mistakes, and we'll continue to make all kinds of mistakes. But I do think overall we've done a pretty decent job, and we've built something that's I think pretty unique and pretty hard to build, and deliver something to customers that is different. Different customers like different things, and I think that we're gonna walk out of this, and every day along the way we're gonna carry a bunch of bruises. But I don't think there's a lot of things that I would look back on and say I really think that we just got that completely wrong. There's a lot of things that we got kind of half wrong, but I think it's hard to hold yourself to a standard of always being right.
Yeah, great. We got a bunch of texts that have come in, and that's myself in there. So if anyone wants to text questions, I'm gonna start with the softballs, I think here. So we have a question in the audience. What's the biggest misperception our industry has about Carvana?
I don't know. I think all the last time you and I, Steve, we were at a different conference and sitting on a panel. And one of the questions that I'll misquote you, so please feel free to correct me. I apologize if I get a little bit wrong, but when you said something along, this was when we were viewing more positive. But you said something along the lines of, you were viewed as the Darth Vader of the industry.
Hold that against me forever.
Well, I'm not holding it against you. We're good. But I found that just so interesting because to me, this industry is so big, right? Like we're talking about used, it's 40 million. If we're talking about new plus used, it's on the order of 60 million transactions a year. We're 400,000 give or take right now. That's 1% of the whole thing. And to me, I think when people look at an industry or their livelihood, the way things are done, they look at the way that other people are doing it, things can get really dramatic really fast, and competition can make things a lot more emotional than they kind of need to be. And I think we've got a dream that we're trying to build toward, and we think that what we offer customers is awesome, right? And we think it's differentiated, we think it's unique, and we think that it's really high quality. We think for customers who love this, they're going to love what we do in a way that other people can't provide an experience similar. But that doesn't mean that tomorrow we're going to sell every car in the world, and it doesn't mean that we think that our dealers are dumb or bad. And I think sometimes some of that nuance can be lost. And so we're a participant in this industry, right? We're trying to build something different for our customers. And I think sometimes when you characterize this as Darth Vader, I was just like, man, that's just so interesting. I don't see it that way, and I hope other people don't see it that way, but people are going to see it the way they see it.
For the record, it was Alex Bender saying that he was selling arms to the rebels. So I was like, that was the context.
Oh, you're right. So you were playing off his metaphor, so but either way, I'm understanding. All right.
Never going to live it down. Yeah, I'm going to live it. All right, cool. So again, I mean, in your position, as a public company CEO, there's some things you will be able to answer, but there are questions coming in about third-party marketplace on Carvana. So this one in particular is allowing partners to sell on their platform. Felt like a potentially promising and disruptive move for you guys. But recently, it seems like Carvana has pulled back from that. Can you speak to this trend and your view about allowing third parties to list vehicles on Carvana?
Sure. Well, I think, and I probably will answer this in a more abbreviated way than would be totally satisfying, so please forgive me. But what I would say there is, we absolutely think that that's a very interesting opportunity for a million reasons. And, you asked me what the lessons that we worked along the way. I'll kind of give you the lesson that's on the list. And going back to everything that's worth doing is hard. I think everything's worth doing is hard, and everything that you try to take on is going to take longer than you think. And I just think when you're in a moment like this, focus is really valuable. And making sure that you kind of pat down the hatches and get ready for a time that might be difficult over the next 12 to 18 months, and you focus on the things that you know you can do that make a positive contribution now. I think it is important, and that's painful because you want to build and focus on the long term. And I think that the reason that we've been able to build something that I think is pretty unique and pretty differentiated over a 10-year period is because in general we do focus on the long term. But when I think that when the cost of capital shoots to the moon, it gets a lot tougher. Sometimes you have to make some hard choices. You have to put some things off that you believe in for now. And I think that that's basically the choice that was made there. So there's not a change in underlying beliefs. I think that there's an increased focus in things that we believe can make a difference in the shorter term relative to kind of the medium term. And so we've chosen to take focus away from that area.